Think horse racing is too complicated? Think again.
And they're off!
Every pro was a newbie once. Meet DRF Newbie, the mobile tool loaded with daily racing form data and the power of DRF AI.
What a shocker!
Get the insights you need fast so you can play smarter and feel more confident. DRF Newbie, horse racing made simple. Try it free today. Visit newbie.drf.com.
Preakness is a great time where you have new fans, new interests in the sport of horse racing. You want to direct them on over to DRF Newbie. Thanks so much for joining us here on our 2026 Daily Racing Form Preakness Preview Show. I am Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona. Craig Milkowski joins us. The show is presented by our friends over at morningline.io. You check out their information at morningline.io.com. Buy, sell, trade, own the game. It's like a stock market for racehorses. Craig, thanks so much for joining us again here. I know Baltimore is home to you, so the Preakness has always got like a nice warm feeling, and it's going to be a little different this year being at Laurel Park.
It is. I'm actually looking forward to seeing it. I've spent many an afternoon and even evening for simulcasting at Laurel Park. It's not Pimlico, but it's good. It's still Maryland, my home state, and I'm looking forward to it. I think it's a really nice card they put together.
David, we want to remind everyone who's following along that they can dive on in to the past performances. You and I are going to be taking care of the betting strategies. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but we'll be pulling up the PPs throughout this conversation. So you can head on over to shop.drf.com if you want to follow along with us. And while we don't have the Kentucky Derby winner, and we don't necessarily have a group from top to bottom of grade 1 winners, I think we have 1 and I think 3 graded stakes winners overall. If we didn't have a real top-heavy Kentucky Derby winner, in my opinion, this is second best. We have a full field of 14. I don't even know who's going to go favorite in here. It's a fantastic betting race.
Yeah, I mean, in horse racing these days, it kind of goes one way or the other. You get the Derby winner, and maybe you get a heavy favorite in a race that's not that interesting to handicap, or you don't get the star power, but you get a wide open race where you can make cases for a lot of horses, potentially catch a price. We've got the latter with this Preakness, not the Triple Crown series that people are used to with horses running back from the Kentucky Derby or a horse even going for the Triple Crown, but in and of itself, in isolation, it's a fun race to handicap.
And I will let everybody know that we've already had a little bit of internet issues from me. I'm on site. I'm going to be headed to the Preakness, so I'm in the hotel room. If for any reason things start to get crazy and I pull off, David will be very capable of taking the reins over. So we'll do our best to try to navigate through this big field. We'll kind of start the conversation. David, I'll pull up the past performances and we can kind of dive right in. And what we did was really go horse by horse when we went through the Kentucky Derby, and it's always nice to have Craig here from Timeform US because we can really pick his brain a little bit about some of the figures. And Craig, just kind of an overall topic before we really get into specifics. You were mentioning the other day on social media, something that we may bring up and may talk about here, the figure for the Wood Memorial, which was a really low buyer figure going into the race. And so after you see how horses come out of that race, sometimes figures get reassessed in buyers, sometimes they get upgraded. And you were saying that maybe we have to look at that race that having a figure that was just a little bit higher than what we thought, because the horses have come back to run pretty well.
Yeah, they definitely have, and it's something I'm really hesitant to do because I know people are betting these numbers, but sometimes when you sit down to make speed figures, you just don't have all the information you'd want. It was a day where there was some rain towards the end of the card, and even though the races looked like they lined up pretty well, the Wood was the last race, the Gazelle the next to last race, if memory serves, and it's one where the majority of horses that come back from those two races have just run a pretty decent sized good figure higher than what they were given that day, at least on Timeform US. I would assume it might be similar on Buyer. I don't know. But outside of Albus, who had some trouble at the start of the Derby, didn't really run a step, most of the other horses that have improved their number between, almost up to about 10 points. And the Gazelle was very similar. I think only the top 3 have run back from that race, but 2 of the 3 of them improved their number 9 points. So it's definitely something worth looking at. Figures are as much art as they are science, particularly when you get changing track conditions like that. And there's some real, it could have some real ramifications in this Preakness, especially when we're going to talk about Ocelli.
David, the assessment of the wood is kind of important for how you handicap this race, because we have a couple different horses that ran in the wood that are going to be in here that you can look at as really live contenders, with Ocelli, with both Iron Honor and Napoleon Solo, who came out of the Wood Memorial. So how you kind of feel about that race, and maybe if you do think it's a little bit higher, you might upgrade or maybe downgrade these horses.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the two key races that you have to look back at when you're handicapping the Preakness are the Wood Memorial and, of course, the Kentucky Derby. And they're both races that featured very similar pace scenarios where they went quickly up front. You see in Timeform US, you got those red color-coded fractions. You see it for the Kentucky Derby. You saw it in the PPs I pulled up for Iron Honor in the Wood Memorial. And I guess the big question that we have to answer around this Preakness is, are those horses coming out of those fast-paced situations in the Wood and the Kentucky Derby going to face another situation like that in this Preakness Stakes? And how are they going to adapt to it? Or if you made some pace excuses for horses in a race like the Wood, are they going to find themselves in another fast pace in this Preakness? So that's kind of one of the things I'm thinking about as I look back at those prep races coming in here.
David, that's kind of a good starting point too. Do you want to pull up the projector,
Sure.
the Timeform US pace projector? Because I think for a lot of handicappers, that's a really nice place to start. How do you think the race is going to shape up, right? How will the pace rate? And I've look through this race. I've followed along with some of your posts about this race. It is hard not to look through this field and think that it's going to be at least a very honest pace early on. There just are so many horses in here who feel like they will do their best running either right on or very close to the lead.
Yeah, for sure. And, Craig, I want to throw it to you because, one of the things I like in the new version of Timeform US is you can pull up the pace ratings of the entire field. I know this is something that people have latched onto, especially with the Kentucky Derby, the horses that have the highest late pace ratings in a race that almost always has a fast pace, like the Kentucky Derby, tend to do well. And the horses that have the two highest late pace ratings in the Kentucky Derby were Renegade and Golden Tempo, who, of course, completed the Exacta. So, I mean, Craig, when you look at this list of early and late pace ratings, doesn't it just kind of jump out at you that you've got all these 100 plus early pace ratings and not as much finishing speed in this Preakness?
No, and it's not really a big surprise. I mean, we don't have a lot of horses in here with a proven closing kick. I think the big question for me in here is, I don't think it's much of a question that Napoleon Solo is going to go for the front. It's what he always does. He's just a naturally fast horse. But it's the ones that are tucked in behind him, and Taj Mahal and Iron Honor, that you have to wonder what the tactics are going to be for those horses. We can see that Iron Honor, they're removing the blinkers, which is accounted for somewhat in the pace projector, but that would tend to indicate to me that they don't want to go to the front. And the one, Taj Mahal, is just a horse who's very lightly raced, and I'm not sure what the plan is. I don't even know if the connections know exactly what he would be best at.
Yeah,
David, he's a great place to start, right? Because he's one of the biggest wild cards in the entire field from a talent standpoint. He's been brilliant. We've seen him go a mile and a mile and an eighth in his last two. I still am not sure if he is a real need the lead horse or not. If you're just basing this off of his last race, because he drew so far wide that the plan had to be to try to go use his speed and get over so he wasn't hooked wide. Maybe with the inside draw, it could be a little different where they would be okay kind of looking over and sitting behind horses, but it's going to be something that's a little different for him, David, because in his two starts going a mile and an eighth, he's been right on the lead.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the plan is going to be. The connections have been pretty cagey about it. Sheldon Russell just saying they're going to play the break. Brittany Russell saying that he's got a lot of natural speed. They're going to play the break, see how it unfolds. I think that's the right way to go about it, because you don't want to make a plan going into the race and execute it no matter what anybody else does. The key for this horse is going to be breaking well from the rail, but while he did have a gait issue on debut that forced him to be off the pace, he's broken very sharply in both the Miracle Wood and the Federico Tessio. So I'm not too worried about him getting out from the inside. It's just a matter of how aggressive he gets after they send him a little bit from the inside, because he's a horse that really just grabbed a hold of the bit in the Federico Tessio and ran off with Sheldon Russell. He got him back, but got him back while there was nobody around him pushing him. You wonder if that's going to be the case in this Preakness, if there's a horse like Napoleon Solo who's vying for the front end with him, him, if he's going to be able to take back off that horse. So there are real questions about what kind of trip he's going to get. But Gino, I do think that the question about his talent was answered last time when he just ran so well. I mean, we take a look at the race in Timeform US. It was a fast pace. I know the raw fractions don't look that fast, but relative to the final time, it was a really fast pace. He kicked on it again at the end. So he showed stamina. It's just for a question of whether or not he can handle this step up in class and whether he's seasoned enough to handle the mental challenge that this Preakness is going to bring up.
Craig, he's not your typical Federico Tessio winner. And this, whether he performs really well in the Preakness and wins or does not, he does feel like coming into this race, he's a lot more of a live contender than some of the horses we've seen winning that race in previous years. And I mean, if you just look at his ownership group, I mean, this is a horse who's SF Racing, LLC Starlight, Madacat. This is a horse that was a $525,000 purchase. It's not necessarily like a rags to riches kind of local horse. This is a horse with a big pedigree, and this horse has the right to be a very, very nice horse.
Yeah, he does. You have to wonder, is he being thrown to the wolves a little too quick? Now, it obviously helps that this isn't the strongest Preakness field we're going to see. But it's still a lot to ask, especially drawing the rail. He's probably going to have to get out of the gate well. I'm not saying he has to gun to the front, but if he doesn't, it could be trouble. He's probably going to face some adversity that he's never seen in his prior 3 starts.
Now, he just opens up on the field here, and this was very, very impressive. David, when we're talking about speed figures, what makes this race fun to handicap is that most of this field is living in the low 90s, and they peak out at about a 95. So it doesn't seem like there's any overwhelming speed figures where someone's shown that they're so fast that if they ran that race, nobody else could compete with them. Really, from top to bottom, even some of the horses that could be longer shots, they're not that dismissed if you're looking at buyers and trying to compare them.
Yeah, and Taj Mahal feels like one of those horses that might be able to take another step forward, where I have trouble making that case for a lot of horses in this race just because Taj Mahal's done it in every race so far, and he's so lightly raced. And I was also reading the article that was written by our DRF colleague Patrick Moquin, who covers the Mid-Atlantic circuit, about Taj Mahal and the Russells. And he was actually pointing out that this horse was supposed to run in the Wood Memorial. And you'll see in the work tab here from March 15th to April 4th, he missed a couple workouts, which is why he didn't end up running in the Wood. But that just kind of speaks to the fact that his preparation for the Federico Tessio was not ideal, and he's had more consistent preparation. Nothing's gone wrong between the Federico Tessio and this Preakness, so maybe there's aptitude for him to take another step forward. I have some doubts watching him train in the morning at Laurel, Gino, because he looks a little unfocused, and I wonder if he's mentally ready for this. But the raw talent is there. We'll just see on the day if the trip works out.
So we go from an undefeated horse who sky's the limit, we don't really know how good he could be, to a horse who's still never won, but he's one of the more accomplished horses in the field, honestly, when you take that third in the Kentucky Derby last time out and the Wood Memorial third 2 starts back. And overall, he generally shows up with a pretty good performance, and he comes running late. Even in some of his defeats, he's been behind Reagan's Honor, Renegade, nice horses. He was not in the Puma in that Sam F. Davis. So he's faced some tough company, Craig. This is a horse who will come running. And in a Preakness that isn't the strongest in the world from top to bottom, I mean, would it be a shock to you to see a maiden get the job done here?
No, not at all. I think he has a big chance in this race. Now, part of it's at Wood Memorial. I'd be a little more leery if a horse suddenly jumped up in the Derby with a huge pace that set up his late run. But if you look at the Wood a little more favorably and add some points to that, then it just looks like more of a nice progression, particularly when you consider his last 2 races are the ones when he removed blinkers, and he seems like a new horse since then. And I also like how he ran the Derby. Now, it probably cost him the Derby in that he moved much earlier than the 2 horses that finished in front of him. But you can see he made up a huge gap to go from 16th to 10th and get into position early. So it's not like he's some plotter that has no turn of foot and was just picking up pieces at the end. This horse made a real run. He seems to be moving in the right direction. And despite those 70-1 odds last time, I think he's a really strong contender in here. And one of 3 or 4, I think, can win.
Yeah, David, I mean, on speed figures, if he's able to come back towards that 94 he ran in the Kentucky Derby, that puts him right there. And you just feel confident about the late rally that he's been giving you in almost each of his races. Like, there have been a couple when he hasn't, but almost every time he shows up with the late rally, even when he stepped up from the maiden ranks to the graded stakes ranks, that rally still kept coming. So on paper, it looks like he should get a pretty nice setup in here. Now, will be for any of these horses that have to wheel back quickly. I think that's always worth mentioning because it's not something that they do. They don't do it often. But with his running style, he really only runs like the last quarter mile of the race, right? He's going to sit back and make that one late run. I wonder how much it takes out of him, wheeling back quickly. Give us some of your thoughts on Oselli.
He's a tough one, Gino, because if you just view his last race in isolation, he's supposed to be the favorite in this race, and it's really not even close because nobody's coming back from the Kentucky Derby that did particularly well, except for him. He was right there at the end with Golden Tempo and Renegade, who if they were back in here either one, they'd be close to odds on in this race. And Oselli's not getting that level of respect, despite the fact that you could argue that given the trip, he might have run a little better than either Golden Tempo or Renegade in the Kentucky Derby. So I don't know what to do with him because I think Craig's point is well taken that maybe the Wood was a little better than it looked at the time. But also, I wonder if he's just the kind of horse that runs to his competition and just is going to basically put in that similar effort no matter what level he's out, because he basically ran the exact same race in the Wood that he did in the Derby, where he was wide, he was staying out of the kickback, but he made that big early move. He got there and then just kind of flattened out at the end. And I don't love, especially considering his status as a maiden, that he shows that tendency to lose a little focus when he gets towards the front or wants to lug in the stretch. That was really noticeable in the Kentucky Derby, where he was kind of lugging in and pushing into some horses to his inside. So you want to see him clean that things up if you're going to trust him to break his maiden and the Preakness Stakes. But like I said, based on the last race, if he runs it back, he's probably going to win.
We have to put in top 4 picks for daily racing form. I put him 4th. I mean, I have him in the mix. I think he's going to show up. I think he's going to run his race. I'll probably look for a couple that might be a little better value, but I think he and in a group of 1 or 2 others are the horses I feel the most confident that they're actually going to run their race in here. So I guess that depends on how much of a price you want to take on him. Anything else you guys want to hit on Oselli before we continue along to Crupper?
The one thing I would say is forget about the 2 weeks. When horses actually do show up, they almost always run their race in the
That's a great point.
We know their top fitness. Maybe later they may pay a little price for doing it if not given the proper rest, but the 2 weeks really doesn't make much of a difference. The vast majority of horses from the Preakness run well.
They run their race, right? Well. And it might be the Belmont or it might be the second half of the year when they start to feel that 2-week turnaround or the 3 races in 5 weeks or something like that. Anything else to mention here, David?
No, I think we can move on to some of these long shots. Crupper's up next.
Yeah, we have a couple back-to-back. And remember to send in some of your comments if you have any questions, anything that you'd like to mention. When I said Crupper's Dam was a hard knocker and looks like a stretch running, well, I'd say he's well meant. So a horse who, when you watch, is really like a grinder too. And they put this horse closer to the front end last time, will probably be one of the longest shots in the field in here. But did win a spot in this race, I believe, in that race at Oaklawn Park, where it gives you a berth over here in the Bathhouse Row. So, David, what are some of your thoughts on big long shots coming up here, starting with Crupper?
Yeah, I'll keep it relatively brief. I think Crupper's going to have no problem getting the distance. I just think he's going to have problems getting the distance as fast as some others in this race. So I have trouble seeing him being competitive with this group or getting the trip that he needs to be successful.
Craig, any thoughts on Crupper?
Not really. I'm with David. I mean, I can get 1 1/8. It just might take me a while. He's just not fast enough. And his one win recently when he won the Bathhouse Row was on the lead. I don't see any world where this horse could hang with horses like Napoleon so well.
Nice to hear from DRMK. I guess it's where it depends on where you are. Pour your bourbon and get you a green-filled cigar ready. Maybe if you're in like California or some of those places. Nice to hear from you. Another couple of comments coming in. As we move along to Robusta, David, Doug O'Neill has had some success in these Triple Crown races. He's won the Derby a couple times. He won the Preakness also with All Have Another years back. This horse does feel like quite a long shot. And when you really look at his overall body of work now, like his last 4 races, that San Felipe, I wonder, it almost looks like it's a little bit of an outlier because he doesn't really replicate that form in any other spots.
Yeah, I mean, at least unlike the horse we just talked about, Robusta's got that one race where you can make a case that he kind of fits with this field based on the San Felipe. It's just his surrounding form just doesn't nearly stack up to that one performance, and it makes you wonder where that 67-1 runner-up finish came from. Look, he's a horse that you would have thought might be forward in the Kentucky Derby. He couldn't even get forward position in that race. He was just outrun every step of the way. Calumet Farm, they love to be involved in these races, price be damned, but I don't see where this horse is going to find the improvement from the Derby.
Craig, Robusta will try to at least show more speed than he was able to last time out. Do you make any long shot case for him here?
No, even if he gets out of the gate clean, he's finished terrible in his last two starts, basically not running at all in the stretch. It'd be a real stretch. I mean, he's going to be a huge price if somebody wants to put some money on him. That's on them, but none of mine will be there.
Okay, we got the pressure on you now, Craig. He says, I like these guys. Usually Milkowski matches me regarding picks. So John Damascus says that you and he are alike handicappers. We'll see what John ends up with in the Preakness, and we'll see what Craig's final thoughts are. Keep sending in your comments. Keep sending in your questions. We'll pull them up as we move along. David, to talking. Now, he's one of the longer shot horses that I actually can make a case for in here, because on speed figures overall, he's just a little bit light, but I think you can go race by race through his career and kind of make sense out of all of the efforts. He wins his debut. He comes back in the Champagne. It's not a bad effort, but Napoleon Solo gets loose and he just can't go with him. In the third start, he's in the Remsen. That's really the one race that's so terrible that you have to put a line through it. And he's just wide all the way around. And that's a race where sandwiched by layoffs. He's coming back in the Tampa Bay Derby, which we've now seen has actually been a pretty strong race back. And then in the Bluegrass, nobody was beating Further Ado that day at Keeneland. He freaked. He was in a pretty good spot when Further Ado just put everybody else away. I wonder if he's at least the type of horse who can get a good trip in here and be sitting behind the leaders, kind of mid-pack, and finish. He's going to go third start of the form cycle. Irad Ortiz jumps aboard. David, what do you think about Talkin's chances in the Preakness?
Yeah, Gino, I know that you've got plenty of interest in this horse. And look, I've seen a lot of people making cases for this horse. So, I mean, there's obviously some appeal to him. I mean, it's just the way this race is laid out, where if you're going to make cases for one of the bigger prices, you're going to have to swallow your fair share of flaws, because this is a flawed field from top to bottom. For me, I have trouble getting past Talkin's flaws. And to me, the biggest one is that I just have not seen the progression from his career debut to where we are now. And that kind of bothers me with a horse that started out looking like he was pretty good last summer at Saratoga. And I've just been kind of disappointed by him every step along the way. I hear you with him facing good company, because you're right. I mean, the Paladin, the Puma, Further Ado, I mean, they'd all be big favorites in this race. I just wish Talkin was more competitive with those horses, because even the Bluegrass, like, I thought that was a terrible addition of the Bluegrass behind Further Ado. And I really thought, given the trip that he got, he was supposed to be second in that race, and he couldn't even hold second. I just don't. I can't get there, Gino. But I know people like him, so I'm not gonna keep knocking him. He's just not for me.
Absolutely, Craig. How about for you? Talking one of the bigger prices, I guess. We'll see if he takes some of that Irad money and some of the connections money.
Yeah, of the big prices, he's the one I guess I could make a little bit of a case for in here, and it's just strictly a pattern thing for me. He had run some nice races, and he just didn't run in the Remsen, didn't show up for whatever reason. And he's come back, and he just keeps slightly improving his figure. He's third off the layoff. I mean, if this horse is 30, 40 to 1, maybe I put a few bucks on him, but it's still going to take a big step up for him to really be a contender in here. And particularly with his running style, he's never really been a horse to make up any ground in the stretch.
There's Talkin. We can move to David. I kind of grouped the few horses together in this race. They were the horses that I personally didn't really know what to do with, because they've shown some of the highest highs, but all three of these horses are coming off of kind of lackluster efforts. The first is Chip Honcho for me. The next was Iron Honor, and then Napoleon Solo, who I kind of had all together because we've seen really good races from them, but then we've seen them just not show up in some spots. Chip Honcho was a horse who ran really well in the Risen Star when he's behind Paladin, and he finished in front of Golden Tempo. So he was in front of the horse who has since come back to win the Kentucky Derby. It's just the last effort in the Louisiana Derby and the races where he hasn't been right on the lead now. I wonder if he's just a horse who does his best running when he gets that easy kind of lead up front. He just hasn't really shown me much other than that.
Yeah, this horse, he's another one that's just not for me. Look, I don't think he's really going to be 5-1 in this race. I can't imagine him taking that much support. I know the morning line's got these horses all grouped together at the same price. I think he's going to drift up quite a bit. I think Chip Honcho is going to be a similar price to Talkin', I'll put it that way. And he probably should be. Like you said, he's got that one race in the Risen Star. I felt that was a day where, speed and the rail was good. I kind of doubted at the time. I think the performances have subsequently played out that horses that were towards the inside on that Risen Star day really were aided. And when you kind of downgrade that performance a little bit in Chip Honcho's PPs, there's just nothing left to hold on to. And he's a horse that needs to be in front to have his best chance. And I'll pull up the Time Form US pace projector again. He's just not fast enough to get there. And Jose Ortiz, he's getting aboard. He's not a particularly aggressive rider. So I imagine they're not even really thinking they're going to go forward with him. I imagine that he's going to get the Robusta treatment, that horse got in the Derby. And he's just probably never going to be a factor in this race. And that's at least how I'm viewing it.
Craig, how do you think Chip Honcho will fare in the Preakness?
Not very well. Similar to what David, I'm almost sure I remember reading recently that their plan was to kind of take him off the pace. And as soon as I hear that for a speed horse, and he is definitely a speed horse, I'm not interested. It usually means they don't think he can run this far, and he'll very likely be running back at 7 furlongs next time or something like that. He just is not that good of a horse, in my opinion.
So Chip Honcho is one that we're all a little bit cold on. It's not really sure if he's going to get the kind of setup that he needs, and not really sure how good he is so far. We can continue along to The Hell We Did, one of the better names in this year's edition of the Preakness. I know people will, the names players will probably put a few bucks on The Hell We Did because they just want to hear the track announcer have to say that a few times throughout the race. That's fun. David, this one comes in off of a runner-up effort in the Lexington for trainer Todd Fincher, who has had really good success in New Mexico. As we see, The Hell We Did was a 13-length winner on March the 15th over at Sunland, and he had a good effort with finishing second at Zia Park back in his 2-year-old season. So do you give this horse any chance in here, making his 3rd start of the year?
I have a prediction that Craig's going to give this horse a chance because I see that Remington Park running line on debut. For me, I'm kind of on the fence about this horse. He's got that impressive win at Sunland Park, first off the layoff this year, where he really did show some talent. He was beating nobody, but he did it very impressively, and he was under wraps. I don't love the Lexington as a race, but it was his first time beyond 6 furlongs. That's a pretty significant stretch out to go from 6 all the way to the 8.5 against Graded Stakes Company for your first attempt. So he ran fine. I'll pull it up here. His pedigree is just stellar on the dam side. His dam Rose's Desert, never out of the exacta, and 15 career starts. She's produced runner after runner, including the popular Senior Buscador. Runaway Ghost, who was a stakes winner going 2 turns on the dirt. Just go down. It's just horse after horse who won a bunch of races. So it's going to be no surprise when The Hell We Did keeps improving through racing. I just wonder if this Preakness is a little too much too soon for him.
Craig, David kind of hinted that you may give this horse a shot with the Oklahoma Forum over there. Do you think he fits and stacks up with this group?
Not at all. I don't. He's just too slow. I'm still a speed figure guy at heart, and this guy hasn't run anything close to really being a contender in here. His Lexington looks okay. And maybe you say, well, that figure, maybe it was better. But we've already seen Trendsetter come back in the Peter Pan. He ran a never really a factor 3rd. He ran okay. He ran about the same speed figure that he did in the Lexington, but it's not competitive here. And this horse wasn't good enough to really hang with him in the stretch. So he's not for me. He'd have to get significantly better.
As if you've ever heard anyone say that Craig is an Okie homer, well, there you go, right there. So you can't accuse him of being a homer. He'll always go with the numbers and what makes sense. As you pull up Bull with the Horns, David, a question came in and asked about the weather forecast. I can tell you I'm 5 minutes away from the racetrack right now, and it says Friday, 71 degrees and sunny, and Saturday, 83 degrees and sunny. There was a little bit of rain last night into today, but it's not supposed to rain at all the next couple days. So we should have a pretty good, a good track out there, like a really fast track. We should have really fair racing conditions on hopefully the grass and on the dirt for all of the big races there. So David, we had a few ask about Bull by the Horns. That's the next one we'll pull up for Safi Joseph Jr., who comes in off the Rushway over at Turfway. So he wins on the synthetic last time out, trying to go back to the dirt where he just hasn't run very many fast races.
Yeah, when you're taking a look at his PPs, at least the daily racing form PPs and formulator here, there's not a whole lot to latch onto. I mean, his top buyer of 70 is lower than the lowest buyer for a lot of these horses. So if there's one positive thing I'll say about Bull by the Horns, it's that when you go over to the Timeform US PPs and you pull up that list of the pace ratings again, you do see he is one of the horses that has a 100 plus late pace rating. He's one of the few closers in this race that's filled with speed. I don't know about you, Craig. That still wasn't enough to get me too interested in him, but I guess if you want a big price closer, I mean, he's a place you could go.
Yeah, I mean, I could see maybe putting him in the bottom of your tries or even superfectas if you think it's going to fall apart. And, a race like this with a big field, it's always possible that it would be, that it could. And the one other thing I'd say is he has shown some ability to run on dirt. We don't always get that with these synthetic horses. I don't even know if he is a synthetic horse. Maybe he likes dirt better. So there's not really a big question there, but he's still way too slow to be considered a win contender by me.
Yeah, there was one comment that said maybe because we haven't seen him on the dirt since February, there's some improvement there and he's a little bit faster than the last time we saw him. And if you're making a case for this horse at a big price and you want to have an angle like that, right? I think that was what came from here. Like, I'm not going to talk you off this big price. I still think he's been so far below what would be competitive with this group. I don't know if that would be enough to make up the difference, even some improvement there. But you know what? When you're talking about big horses prices like this, and as David was pointing out, he could at least be passing more than half the field in here late if they go really quick early on, right, David?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say he looks about as competitive as Rich Strike did in the 2022 Kentucky Derby. So I mean, anything's possible. I know he's got those 2 fast workouts on the dirt recently at Gulfstream Park. I did watch the most recent of those, and it didn't look nearly as good on video as it does on paper. He was not nearly competitive with a horse that's inferior to him on paper. So I don't quite get why they're running in here, but maybe he picks up some pieces.
Before we move along to Iron Honor, we want to let you know that the Preakness will offer betting strategies at shop.drf.com. David Aragona and Gino Buccola. Oh, I'm doing those with you, David. Now, I got to ask you just to remember, I'm not a writer, so don't Marcus Hirsch me and make your writing all amazing, and then I look really bad compared to it because I'm not an eloquent writer. So take it easy on me when we're writing these betting strategies, and we'll let you know how we feel, how we're going to be playing the races on Saturday. David and I will give you some suggested wagers along with analysis. There's a few races where we come together where we have very similar opinions. And then like any big day, there's going to be a bunch of races where we have differing opinions, and we'll let you know why and how we're playing those races. So tomorrow, David, I think people will be able to take a look at those betting strategies, right?
Yeah, we'll be slaving away, I think, late into the evening writing those tonight. So we'll get them out by tomorrow.
So let's continue along, and we move to the 9 Iron Honor. Had a few asking about Iron Honor in here. And I mean, if you're playing Iron Honor off of his first 2 races, he was the Wood Memorial favorite going in. Those 2 races look very good. Then in the Wood Memorial, lackluster effort as the favorite that day. He was wide. I think you can make some legitimate excuses for him. It wasn't like overwhelming trouble, but I thought wasn't the greatest trip in the world. And we have seen Chad Brown do this before, David, where someone was asking about this, where he had a plan. This was a horse that they skipped the Derby with, and this is a horse that some of these horses who could have gotten into the Derby instead choosing to go to the Preakness because it's probably going to be an easier spot for them than that big field of 20 with a lot of going on. And I think that was a question that we had here. Which horses do you think were kind of pointed at the Preakness? We know Taj Mahal was one of them because he had that win and you're in victory in the Federico Tessio. And this might have been another one too, David, after this race where they said, maybe we give him a little bit more time and point to the Preakness.
Yeah, I mean, Chad's obviously had success making this move in the past. He's won the Preakness with cloud computing and with early voting after they ran through this New York series of preps and prepped for the Preakness basically in the Wood Memorial, skipping the Kentucky Derby. I don't know if there's been quite as much intention around doing it with Iron Honor, who it seems like they did want to make the Derby with him, and he just didn't run well enough in the Wood for them to go on to a race as tough as the Kentucky Derby. So he's landing here. If we're going to be talking about the Wood as a race that you want to upgrade a little bit, obviously Iron Honor gets folded into that conversation because you saw the early part of that replay that I showed. He drew post 12. He was wide. He got bumped. He got hung out wide. He got a little rank after getting bumped. So he did have excuses in that race. You see, I mean, I got Formulator pulled up now, but you can also go in Time Form US to see all the red color-coded fractions indicating it was a fast pace and a very fast pace in the Wood Memorial. He was chasing it and doing it wide, so you can make excuses for him. Craig, and maybe I'm just making too much of this. I just, when I watch this horse run, I'm not filled with confidence that he's a mile and 3/16 horse. But maybe I'm making too much of that based on the Wood visual. What's your take?
Yeah, I worry about the distance for him too. And I also worry about his running style. I'm not really sure he's a horse that wants to raid in behind horses, which I think might be the plan. They're taking blinkers off of him here. I doubt they want to try to run with Napoleon Solo early. And yeah, I agree. He hasn't really finished off his races all that strong, even when he was winning. A mile and a 3/16, it could be a stretch. And yeah, he's just a horse. I'm not sure what kind of trip he's actually going to get in here that's going to work out. And like I said earlier, with a much lesser touted horse, I just never like when a speed horse is going to be trying something new in a spot like this.
David, something that you and I have talked about many times through the years, when you have some of these horses who have only shown speed or have only been sitting second, just off the leader, a length off, and then all of a sudden they're in a situation where they might be 4 or 5 lengths behind, right? It's hard to take a short price on horses doing something like that. And I get the sense, like Craig was saying, that they want to try to take this horse back a little bit. And sure, maybe that'll be a better trip, but in his races, he has shown that naturally he wanted to be right up there and pretty close. There could be a lot of company up front if he is in that mix. And if he's not, I kind of like other horses that have at least proven to me that they're more of a closer or a mid-pack type horse.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. I don't really want to take a short price on a horse that's going to experiment with something new in a race like this. And yeah, he's in a similar boat to Taj Mahal, who we talked about, who might also have to experiment with a different running style. But unlike Taj Mahal, whose trajectory has been nothing but up and up and up as his buyers increase, we're seeing the opposite with Iron Honor, who ran his best race on debut. His Gotham was okay, but it wasn't quite as good as his debut. And then he took that step backwards in the Wood with excuses, but it was still a step backwards as the distances have gotten longer. And when I look at his pedigree, he is a Nyquist out of a Blame dam, but you look at his dam, she won her only race going 6.5 furlongs on the dirt. And I just wonder if he's a horse that is really cut out for this. And I think people just assume that he is because he's trained by Chad Brown and ridden by Flavien Prat, but I don't know. I'd need a price closer to like 8-1 or 10-1 if I was going to back him in this spot, and I don't think I'm going to get it.
You were kind of pointing this out, and that's the same thing with Chip Honcho, where they have not run their better races as they've got longer. And the same can definitely be said for Napoleon Solo, who we're going to get to next, who was very, very good and precocious early on in his career. He won his debut, and then he came back into Champagne. He wins by 6+ lengths. He earns a 95 buyer speed figure. He ends up beating Talkin, who he'll face again on Saturday in that race. And so off of those 2 races, starting his 3-year-old season, David, he was on a lot of short lists of, top 5 to top 10 horses that you're looking at for this year coming into the Kentucky Derby. And he started out in the Wood Memorial, didn't really get towards the front end like he wanted. And so I think you could have made an excuse for him in that race. First start as a 3-year-old, didn't get towards the lead. He did get the trip he wanted in the Wood Memorial, and he was on the lead, and he was on the lead, turning for home, and even early in the stretch there, and just couldn't finish it off.
Yeah, when you look at his past performances, the thing that kind of sticks out at you is that he has been involved in some really fast paces, and it's not like he's totally fallen apart being involved in them. I mean, that was certainly the case in the Champagne, and yeah, the Wood Memorial, like we talked about a few times already. It was a total pace collapse situation, and he was the speed that hung around the best of all at the end. And, I'll pull this up in Formulator, but it's the exact same thing in Timeform US, as Craig was alluding to, if you want to look at it. Horses have come back out of this race to improve, but specifically, I want to talk about a horse named Talk to Me Jimmy, who was the one that was pursuing Napoleon Solo on the front end, the one that was pressing him in the early stages of that Wood Memorial. He faded to finish behind Napoleon Solo. He came back last week and improved his buyer by 15 points, finishing second in the Peter Pan. So I think that speaks to the fact that not only is maybe the Wood a better race than we thought it was at the time, but the horses that you really want to upgrade out of the Wood are those that were involved in that fast pace. And Napoleon Solo, I mean, he certainly fits that bill. The question is, can he get a mile and 3/16? I don't know the answer. I don't pigeonhole him as a pure sprinter like I think some people do, but I do think the 9.5 furlongs is going to be a bit of a stretch. Craig, I wonder how you see this pace playing out. Do you think that connections are going to be daring enough to really try to go with this horse on the front end?
I think they should be. I think that's his chance to win. And I actually like this horse quite a bit. Mm-hmm. I think he's had some issues coming in. The Fountain of Youth obviously didn't go well. There were some breaks in training there. I didn't follow exactly what was going on. But for the first time coming into this race, he's actually shown a really solid training pattern. He's working fast. I'll let David speak to how well the works are. He's better at that than I am, but he certainly seems like a horse who is on the right path. And I actually think he's going to find himself all alone on the lead in here. And if he's going to get a mile and 3/16, that would be the time to do it, when he's just allowed to coast on the front end, something that we just haven't seen from him since the Champagne. And we saw how dangerous he was that time when it happened. So if he can get anywhere near that 121 he ran as a 2-year-old, this race is his for the taking. Obviously, a lot different circumstances. That was a 1-turn mile, but this is not the strongest field, as we've talked about many times. And it's a race where some people like talking. I don't totally dismiss him. And he just destroyed him that day easily. So he's a horse that if he runs his race, he's good. And I think he's going to offer a better price than some others. And you made the same point I was going to make about the pace. I don't know if we really want to count Iron Honor as being on the pace, because he wasn't. He was kind of sitting third off of it. But like you said, we've already seen the horse who was involved in the speed duel come back and run a much better race. And I'm not going to be surprised at all if we see that from Napoleon Solo.
And I think, David, when we're looking at, if you go through each of these speed horses individually, I think he's the fastest. And I think he might be the best of the speed horses. And as we were talking, and I kind of grouped him along with Chip Honcho and Iron Honor, of these horses who I wasn't sure what to do with. They've probably run some of the better races overall a couple times, but I think he is the most interesting of those three for sure. And if I'm playing some pick 4s or pick 5s, like those kind of wagers, he's on the tickets for me, because like Craig said, I think there's a version of this race where he gets loose. And if maybe he's not a distance horse, but I don't think he's going to win a race like that if he's not on the lead. I think the only chance he has winning a race going this far is if he clears and can pour it on early.
Yeah, I think a lot of the connections of these horses are already getting it in their heads about how the Derby was a pace collapse, how there's so much speed in this Preakness. They're making plans to rate their horses. And I think that Napoleon Solo's brilliance is going to scare a lot of people from trying to send. So I agree. I think he's going to be up front. I don't know if anybody's going to be going with him. I don't think he's going to be able to slow down the pace much. I think it's going to be an honest pace, but I think he's going to be able to kind of do his thing, and we'll just see if he's able to do it at this distance. But I agree. I mean, if he's around 8-1, I think that's a fair price on him, and he's an interesting win bet.
Napoleon Solo, perhaps the quickest in here. He will have a little bit of speed right next door in Corona d'Oro, who set the pace in the Lexington, David. He broke his maiden back in March. He actually ran a 92 buyer in defeat back in January when he was behind Noble Affair. So he has gotten into the 90 buyer speed figure range. But his last couple races, he's gone in the other direction. They've been a little bit lower. He comes into this race with showing some speed in his last couple. Talk to us a little bit about the chances you give him.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of disappointed in his Lexington because I thought he was a horse that looked like he was coming around when he ran those 2 maiden races at Fairgrounds. And it seemed like he got the 2 turns in the maiden score. But I thought he got a very good trip in the Lexington. He bounced out from the rail, just inherited the lead, wasn't really pushed that much. And he just really had no answer when that long shot trendsetter came to him and couldn't even hold second over the horse we already talked about, the Hell We Did. So that's just not the kind of effort that I would want coming into a race like the Preakness.
Craig, what do you think about Corona d'Oro's chances in here?
Not much. Maybe he's a horse that's going to try to make the lead based on his last couple. The one positive I'd say on Timeform US, he's basically run the same race 3 times in a row. I think they're all around 103s or so. But yeah, he's a horse that I just don't know how he could win with the speed in here. He hasn't really shown that he can close. And yeah, he's just not fast enough. I did want to make one comment. I saw one of the comments said that the run-up is very short at Laurel. I don't think it's going to be for this race. They announced that it's like 60 feet, which isn't an overly long run-up, but it certainly isn't short.
We did have a couple questions coming in about other races on the card or other races this weekend. We are only going to be focusing on the Preakness here, but I will say there are video previews, David, on our YouTube channel of basically all the big races this weekend on Friday or Saturday. So if you have any questions or if you need some help with those races, you can check those, go through each field horse by horse, and then give you selections at the end of them with David, myself, Ashley Mayu, Mike Beer in a lot of those videos. So there's also a pick 5 strategy video if you need some help with that. So we do have a lot of analysis on the other races, plus the betting strategies that we'll be providing this weekend on Saturday too. So we will go into a lot of analysis on those other races as well. And then one more question that's kind of like more of a wide open wagering question, because I don't actually always talk to you guys about this. Craig, what types of wagers do you play at the track? Like, what's your favorite wager to get into, and what type of a player are you? Oh, I think we had you muted, Craig.
Yes, my fault. Blame my dog for that. Yeah, I'm definitely more of a vertical than a horizontal player. My favorite bet by far is the Exacta. And what's coming around now is, even though it's horizontal, it's a daily double. I'm playing those more if I have opinions of both legs.
And what's nice too, Craig, is like about the doubles, they are having the low takeout doubles with the $5 minimum at some tracks, which are kind of fun. And so if you have a strong opinion, those can play well. And the late $3 pick 3s at places with the low minimum, those end up playing really well. David, what types of wagers are you kind of focusing in on a lot right now?
You know, for me, it really depends on the handicapping opinions. I try to dabble in all different types of wagers. I would say my bread and butter is always playing to win. That's where well, in theory, you know what price you're getting. You could use some tools to estimate it. Obviously, we know some of the issues around that. But no, I always try to lock in, the opinions that I feel strongest about in the win pool, and then I'll sort of go from there and expand on that, playing some exotic wagers or some multi-race wagers. I'll play pick 5 sometimes, but I'll probably go a little thinner when I play them on a regular basis rather than doing these huge bloated tickets all the time, because those can really drain your bankroll, and you've got to be selective about when you go after those types of wagers.
Yeah, I'm always going to take a shot on one of the bigger like pick 5 sequences on the weekend, but about half of my bankroll now is just going to straight win wagers. And I think it just has to do with like a lot of the way that I play. I'm looking for a lot of big price horses, right? I'm never betting horses usually that are under 4-1 or 5-1 on the win end. So when you're playing a pick 5, it's difficult to string 5 horses like that together a lot of the time, right? And if you're not at least betting to win on some of your strong opinions, earlier on in my life, I would do that. And it was so frustrating. Like, man, I was 4 out of 5. I had a couple great prices and I got nothing out of it. So I make sure that I play the tickets a little bit smaller, and I'm always putting in a few win wagers on those big prices that I like, because, you know, you got to at least capitalize on your strong opinions if they get home. So good question, because I know everybody plays the races a little bit differently. Let's continue along. We have just a couple more horses to preview in this Preakness preview. I think we got to the number 12, right, David? Incredibolt, who was kind of the last horse to be entered in this race. We didn't really even know he was going to be in until the day of the entries. And it's been funny over the last few days. A lot of people have been talking about how Bill Mott did not want to run horse back in 2 weeks with Sovereignty after winning the Kentucky Derby last year. And then son Riley Mott says, you know what? I'm fine throwing one in here. And he said that he talked to his dad about it. And he said, yeah, if you think the horse is doing well and look at the race and it's not the strongest race in the world, why not take a shot? And a horse who wasn't even in the mix until the day of the entries, David, I mean, he could vie for favoritism in this race. It would not shock me at all if he went off favorite here.
Yeah, Riley should be pretty happy that his dad didn't follow his own advice, because I don't think Incredibolt will be beating Chief Wallaby in this race. But as the race came up, Gino, I think Incredibolt's the most likely winner. I mean, he ran fine in the Derby. I wouldn't say it was a spectacular effort, but he ran just fine. And I think you have to make a distinction when you're comparing his trip to that of Oselli, who both were closers in the race. But remember, when you watch back that Derby replay, they were like 4 horses that were detached from the rest of the pack all the way at the back of the field. And Oselli was one of those. And while Incredibolt was back in 13th, 14th early, he was attached to that main pack. And those horses kind of all were getting really tired at the end of the race. So I'm not going to be too hard on him for not finishing with the same vigor that the top 3 did. I thought, considering the pace and the way it came apart, he showed that he at least got the distance, and he hung with some horses that would be much shorter prices than him in this race. And, unlike Oselli, he hasn't had this super busy schedule so far in 2026. He had the prep 7 weeks before the Kentucky Derby. So now he's coming back in 2 weeks. He's probably still a fresh horse. He's going to get pace that he wants to close into. I just think he makes a ton of sense in this race. If he wins this race, I'm not going to suddenly say he's the best 3-year-old in the land, but the way this Preakness came up, I think he's ultra dangerous.
Craig, what do you think about Incredibolt coming back after the Kentucky Derby, finishing 6th?
I'm on a little bit different page than David on this horse. I didn't really like his Derby. I know he was only beaten 4 lengths and the speed figure looks fine. But he's just a horse that, to me, at no point in the race did he ever look like he was even going to hit the trifecta. So he kind of reminds me of a harness horse that sits third on the rail and just gets sucked around. I know he wasn't on the rail during the race, but he was still behind horses the whole time, just kind of getting sucked along. Didn't really have much of a finishing kick. I guess the distance is the one thing. I'm not saying the horse can't win the race. If he was 10 or 12 to 1, yeah, I'd be like, sure, give him a shot. But like you said, he's going to be one of the most bet horses in the field. I won't be surprised if he winds up the post-time favorite. So I'm not really interested in him from that perspective. And again, I'm just a little bit leery of the kind of what I call it, just a suck-up trip where he never really did any running at any point, just kind of grinded away.
Craig, you're still a great partner to David, as you mentioned harness racing, and David debuted, I think, today as one of our harness handicappers on the Daily Racing Forum YouTube. Is that correct, David?
Yeah, I did a video previewing the Oak Grove Trotting Derby with our DRF harness lead Derek Givner earlier today. So yeah, check that out on the Daily Racing Forum YouTube channel, as well as all our Preakness coverage.
As if David didn't have enough races to handicap this week in the Preakness week, he threw in a few harness races as well.
I will definitely be talking to David about that offline.
Yeah, Craig, I think you know the genesis of that.
I saw that one earlier and I said, wow, man of many, many talents. So yeah, some differing opinions on Incredibolt. I had him, I think, 3rd. He's going to be on a lot of my closing tickets just because I do think, as you pointed out, the running style, the way the class of this field is, he's right there going into the Derby. Remember, he had run previously in the Virginia Derby. So he was coming into the Derby off one of the longer layoffs. And maybe he actually will enjoy this quick turnaround with that race and the 2 weeks back. And maybe he can build off of that Kentucky Derby performance. That was Incredibolt. Let's move to the last 2, who I think David will probably want to be as forward as possible, especially with the outside draws. They've both been forward in some of their recent races. The first one is Great White. Now, he was the horse that was in the Kentucky Derby, and he flipped behind the starting gate, and they had to scratch him prior to the race. So he was ready to go. He was entered, had an incident. Connections have said he's fine. He came out of it completely fine right afterwards, but it's just one of those protocol things that you'll see on any big day now. If a horse goes down in the post parade in the paddock, anything like that, they're almost always going to scratch them now, no matter how bad they look when they stand up. And so, David, Great White doesn't really have a whole lot of dirt for him to go off, though, because his only dirt race was in the Bluegrass when he set the pace and faded and was defeated by 20 plus lengths. So we're playing him projecting his dirt form or off of the synthetic form. His best race on the synthetic was winning the John Battaglia Memorial, where he beat Full Effort. Do you give him any shot in here?
Not really, and I guess I'll even pump the brakes on the idea of him being a speed, because I think I saw his connections say that they were not happy that he was leading in the Bluegrass last time, and they don't view him as having that kind of running style. So yet another horse that could be forward that I don't think the plan is to go forward. And Gino, if they don't, I don't think there's really a trip that works for him in this race, because I just didn't see any dirt affinity in his Bluegrass performance. So I thought he ran pretty well in that John Battaglia, considering the way that came apart at the end. But I just don't think this is the right race for him.
Craig, Great White, what are your thoughts on him in here?
Now, first of all, I'm glad to see he is getting the run here. It was a shame what happened. You could just see how gutted his jockey Achard was there. And yeah, that was really heartbreaking, even though I didn't think the horse had much chance. It just shows how important the Kentucky Derby is. As far as him as a contender, I just don't see it. I'm not sure how the connections will look at those PPs and think he's not really a speed horse. He closed a little bit in the sprint, but he should be up front if he's going to run his best race. But his best race isn't going to be competitive in the Preakness.
I will say this would be my son's hunch play. He's a big fan of Jaws, so I would tell him, Milo, you're going to need a bigger boat here, buddy, with Great White in this one. I'd have a tough time getting to him as well, just on paper, like making the case for him based off of his trip, based off of what we've seen from him recently on the dirt. That's Great White, who's going to be the number 13 in the Preakness on Saturday. Once bitten, twice shy. Somebody said that was a fun comment that came in right there. Pretty boy Mia rounds out the field, David. So this one comes off of back-to-back victories. Pretty impressive, but he has not been beyond 1 mile ever. And we generally don't see horses come into the Preakness without having a little bit more experience with distances. So he's been pretty close to the lead in his last two. They were both at Aqueduct. He's now going to be parked way out wide. Talk to us about him. You think his chances, what kind of trip maybe he can get? That's the pretty boy on the outside.
Yeah, Gino, I'll just make a general point as we're kind of finishing up these two long shots that I wanted to hit upon earlier. And that's, don't be surprised if the betting board looks a little strange in this Preakness, because we've seen it in the past few years, and it comes up again as we talk about our wagering strategy. You might want to change up your strategy and really take a hard look at, the win pool in this Preakness and finding value there, because we've seen some horses that should be 50-1 going off 15-1 in this race. And if that trend continues this year, if you think any horse is the most likely winner in this Preakness, you're going to get a fair price on him, because all the long shots can't be 15 to 20-1 and you have somebody go off at 2-1. The math just doesn't add up. So, you could find the favorite in this Preakness literally at 9-2 or 5-1. And if you think a horse is more likely to win than that, then that's a great bet for you. So consider betting the most likely winner that you believe, whatever horse you believe that to be in this race. That's just a point that we should make about win betting in the Preakness. As for Pretty Boy Maya, look, I'm pretty familiar with the New York circuit. I know he's got some pretty flashy speed figures his last couple of races. The maiden field he beat was pretty good, and we saw a horse come out of it win impressively today at Aqueduct. The last race, it was just a starter allowance. It got a fast number. I don't think a whole lot of the field. I will say a couple horses, or I think one horse, the runner-up out of that race, is running tomorrow at Aqueduct if you want to get some insight into that speed figure. But I just don't see the upside for this horse going 2 turns. I don't know how you felt about it, Craig.
No, he's clearly gotten better with the addition of blinkers, with the 2 blowout wins. his speed figures are a little bit lacking in here, but they're not terrible. It's just he's another one. Do you really want to see him running with Napoleon Solo early and sticking around at the end? And for me, that's just really hard to see.
So I'm going to run through some of the comments that people had about the horses that they like, and I will hand the baton to you, David. Tell us now, as we've kind of gone through the field, first time since 2011, we have a field of 14, a big field like this. Who are some of the horses that you want to use? Who are some of the horses that are going to be in the mix for you?
Yeah, so this is one of those races where I know this is a frustrating answer, but I don't really want to commit too hard to a top pick because I want to see the board.
Yeah.
The Preakness betting can be very unpredictable.
It's almost like the Derby, and it's just those two races are very different. It doesn't seem like the Belmont has caught on like that, where the wagering is that strange in that race.
I'm going to say there are 3 horses that I could bet to win in this race, and I'm going to have to make a game time decision when I see what prices they are. And those 3 horses are the number 1, Taj Mahal, the number 10, Napoleon Solo, and the number 12, Incredibolt. And I've got to set what I think are fair odds on each of them and see if I get that. And if multiple horses of those are fair odds, then I get to play around and maybe some exotic wagers too with them. But I really want to see the prices because I think that there are positives with all 3, but I think there are negatives with all 3. When I had to submit my picks for DRF, I did make the number 1 Taj Mahal my top pick. I want to see what price he is. I mean, maybe the Brittany Russell storyline really takes off after Cherie DeVaux winning the Derby and he goes favorite in this race. I wouldn't want to bet him as the favorite. In that case, suddenly Incredibolt becomes way more interested in me because I think he is the most likely winner, and the most likely winner probably is going to be value in this Preakness. And if Napoleon Solo is 9-1, I'll be betting him to win because he feels like he could be the biggest price of those 3. And I think he is the most talented horse in this race. We'll just see if he gets the distance.
Craig, I'm rolling through some of the comments here. So a big thank you to everyone who sent in their selections or questions or comments. Who are some of the horses that are going to be in the mix for you?
I like Napoleon Solo quite a bit. I like how he's been training. I think he's the best horse in the field. And I think he's going to be alone on the lead. So you can't ask for much more than that. That said, like David said, you got to see the odds. If he's 4-1 or 9-2, suddenly I changed my view a little bit and maybe look elsewhere. But I think he is probably the horse to beat. I like Ocelli. I think he's definitely going to run his race. I am a little worried that he doesn't like to finish, but I will be playing exactas with those 2 if the prices are as expected. And I'll probably use just a little bit of talking and some tries and supers because I think he might be a little better than we thought. And then it's just going to be a matter of watching the tote board and seeing, if I'm getting the prices I expect to. In races like this, you have to be versatile. I could even see myself using Iron Honor if he starts slipping a little bit in the odds, if he winds up being a horse who's 7 or 8-1. Probably not going to happen, but you never know, so you don't want to be too set. But if I had to give a top pick, it would be Napoleon Solo and be playing exactas with him and Ocelli.
We go Nick Sievers, who's always chiming in. He said, I'll offer 2-1 on Boselli still being a maiden by the Sunday after the Breeders' Cup. So, and maybe he'll hit the board in a bunch of big races along the way and pick up a bunch of checks. We have to put in a top 4 for daily racing form. I made the 5 talking just based on value, my top selection. And then I have 3 of the logical horses underneath in the next 3 spots. I do think between Taj Mahal and Incredibolt, those are the 2 of probably the shorter price horses that I'm the most intrigued by. I think Taj Mahal might have the opportunity to be a really, really nice horse. I don't have to bet him on the win-in because I actually played that Preakness future wager and I got $50 to win on him at 20-1. So I feel like he'll be less than 20-1 if he gets in the starting gate. I feel like I got a free roll for my money there if that's the case. Then I have Incredibolt in the 3rd spot. I have Ocelli in the 4th spot. And the horse I will use in some pick 4s and 5s is Napoleon, because I just think there are chances that he gets loose on the lead. I think there are chances that if he runs his race, it's about as good as anybody's A game, whatever that would be, whatever type of race that would be. He's shown us about as much brilliance as anyone. So For me, those are the horses that are going to be in the mix. Before we get out of here, one more quick reminder that you can take a look at shop.drf.com. You can get those Preakness past performances. They are available now, so you can go through the DRF PPs like we just did. If you want to look at the pace projector, those are in the Timeform US past performances. So make sure you get the Timeform US PPs or you get the all access past performances. We'll also have betting strategies available for you. Myself and David will be writing them. And so we can help you, some of the races where you may need help, you're not really sure. We'll try to tell you how we're playing those races. We'll give you some suggested wagers and analysis. Craig, it's always fun chatting with you. You took it nicely on me, even though your Thunder just swept my Lakers. So you didn't give me any pokes or jabs or anything at all. So I appreciate that. That's because we're good friends.
Yeah, it was expected. So I can't really knock you too much for that.
If
you're loyal. Yeah,
exactly.
you're a loyal fan. I got no issues with that.
So, Craig, maybe we'll have you back in a couple weeks for the Belmont if you want to come and wrap this whole Triple Crown up with us. David, get to work, my friend. I know it's finishing up here, but I know you still got a lot going on. So thanks.
I'm deleting some semicolons and M dashes as we speak.
And we always
and you got to start studying for the Meadowlands piece. That'll be here before you know it.
There we go. He's going to go from Saratoga right over to Saratoga Harness. He's going to be pulling the double headers coming up too soon. So, David, thank you. Thanks to everyone out there. We always appreciate the comments. Your comments, your questions. It just makes the show more interactive, more fun. You guys are our other co-hosts. So you give us topics to get into that we don't have. So thanks again. Thanks to producer Shiva for helping us out. And we'll see all of you back in a few weeks for the Belmont. Good luck.